Welcome to the Connors and Ferris High School Sports Show, a special edition Section 5 football playoff forecast with myself, Jeff DiVeronica, your longtime host, and the guru. I took the name away from George Giordano. I give it to Steve Bradley. He is our football guru. We're going to take you through all the games coming up this weekend. Great action. We can't wait to get it started. Steve, what are your thoughts before we get going on the brackets?
Jeff, it's the best time of year, really. You know, the days are getting shorter, dark, crisp, but bite in the air. You can feel the pads popping, and we're ready to go. I mean, this is what you play for. The next 3 weeks, everybody's playing for a brick, the 8 teams that qualified, and I can't wait to get started.
Well, it could go topsy-turvy, but I think there's a lot of chalk in these brackets, so we'll see what you think. Let's start with the largest classification, which looks a lot different than a while here. I mean, Hilton hasn't been out of Class AA since 1998. Schrader hasn't been out of AA in a while either. But you got a 3-time defending champ in McQuaid. You've got a Victor team that hasn't lost in like a couple of years. No, I'm kidding. And then you got a top seed that people think is going to walk to this thing. UPrep, 8-0, the top seed. Number 2 is Victor, 7-1, coming off a big victory last week over McQuaid. 3 are those Jesuit Knights, 6-2. The 4 seed is Pittsford against Penfield. And oh, by the way, we got to talk about what Penfield did last week. 5-seeded Patriots, 6 is Rush Henrietta, and 7 is Aquinas sneaking into the playoffs. And finally coming in at 8, the Fairport Red Raiders, Steve. Are they a live underdog at number 8 going against UPrep?
That's a great question, because people will just take a look at the record and say UPrep has walked through. They're 8-0. Fairport is 2-6. But on October 14th, Jeff, just 2 weeks ago, 12-7. UPrep, probably its biggest scare of the season. There have been close games, but I don't think many people expected that game to be close. UPrep came away with a 12-7 win, and you just wonder if the Red Raiders are going to be able to summon up enough energy to pull the upset. I mean, I think it's a long shot, but they showed that they can hang.
These all could be very good games. They really could. If you go Pittsford Penfield, I mean, I would have said a few weeks ago, oh, Pittsford rolls this. But what has gotten into Penfield and Coach Bianchi? What happened last week, Steve?
Well, let's go back to the Bianchi Bowl, if we will. It was Penfield versus Anthony Bianchi's alma mater, Aquinas, and it was a matchup of 2, 3, and 4 teams, and Penfield prevailed 20-14. Of course, Anthony Bianchi, the Penfield coach's father, is a longtime athletic director, Anthony Bianchi at Aquinas, and I know we texted back and forth, and it just turned heads. And I've seen this Penfield team play a couple of times, Jeff, and I really believe it's all about style and matchup in the playoffs. They're a team that is more comfortable in the trenches, a slow down, run, slug it out game. They did play Pittsford on September 9th, week 2, 45-14 Panthers. And I think the difference in this game is going to probably be the passing game of Caleb Lewis. Todd Lewis is his father. We remember him from St. John Fisher.
Absolutely.
And Jackson Green, a tough matchup. Now, if the Patriots can somehow find a way to slow down that combination, grind things out, and win the turnover battle, maybe. They had an early lead that first game, but I think that Pittsford passing game, and how many times have we said that? Keith Molinich, right? Well, he likes to grind it out, but you got to go with the players you have, and I think the Pittsford passing game might really be the difference here.
Let's get vertical. Oh, wrong song, but anyway.
And I think, I don't know if we've mentioned on the show, I think Jackson Green has committed to Princeton. So yes, he's a great 3-sport athlete, a lot of fun to watch. And he's
a tough cover. The fact that this is even in doubt, and the fact that Penfield beat Aquinas is almost, if I told that to you a year ago, you would have laughed in my face. Penfield beat Aquinas.
I'm not the only one, and I don't laugh in people's faces, but I'm stunned. And you know, maybe it's a down year at Aquinas, but living in the Penfield district and knowing a lot of people around the program, one of the concerns of Penfield, remember, went independent a couple of years ago, and one of the concerns around the Penfield program was, would they be able to compete with the biggest schools? When they're in Class A, they've been more competitive, but Aquinas, the winningest program in the state with 15 championships, that's just a signature win for this Penfield program, regardless of what happens the rest of the season. That's one of those nights to remember.
These are all Friday night games. McQuaid is going to host Rush Henrietta. Royal Comet, Steve, started really strong this fall, kind of tailed off, and McQuaid, listen, look, you're the 3-time defending champs. You've been knocked in the mouth a few times this year, lost a couple games. I think Bobby Bates and his group got something to prove.
Dude, it was a 28-7 game against Rush back on October 8th. And, Coach Bates and that staff have done such a good job. As the number 3 seed, as much as that you don't maybe like that, you might love it. It's like, we're the 3-time defending champs. People are counting us out as the 3 seed. Let's go show them, because with this federation schedule, really the playoffs are all about a second opportunity. You learn a lot the first time you play these teams. And then, McQuaid UPrep, I'd sign up for that. McQuaid Victor, I'd sign up for that. Victor UPrep, I'd sign up for that.
A lot of these rematches are pretty cool. The last game, the last one in Class AA, is Victor hosting Aquinas. 7-1 Blue Devils coming off a big win. These are the 2 bridesmaids, Steve, right? They're the 2 teams that were runner-up the last couple of years to McQuaid in the final. So we'll see what happens in that one. And again, these all have the potential to be great ball games, and I wouldn't say that about all the brackets.
I wouldn't either. And interestingly enough, according to my research, these teams haven't played this season. And we have been at some very exciting Victor Aquinas games over the years. There's a great history. And 7-1 Victor, 3-5 Aquinas. One night, yeah, Victor, you got to give them the title of favorite coming into the game. But you learn. We both learned a long time ago, you don't count on Aquinas, right?
No way.
So you got, I would think Victor's the favorite, but if something happened where Aquinas were to spring the upset, it happens. So I mean, you mentioned chalk. I see the potential for a couple of,
Well, this is the bracket. I would say that there's more parity than the others.
Yeah, it should be competitive, and even if there's not upsets, I expect good games.
If the next 2 brackets, A1 and A2, don't go 1-2, I think a lot of people will be surprised. The Class A1 top seed, the Webster Schrader Warriors, coming in at 8-0. It's been a while for Webster to win a title, Steve Bradley. They'll open up, which should be a walk over against Greece Olympia Odyssey. 0-8 team made the playoffs. So interesting. There used to be, you couldn't get into the playoffs with that kind of record, but I guess you can now.
Well, there used to only be one Class A too. So I'm glad that this is spread out, and there's more participation, more opportunity.
The 4-5 game is a good one. Spencerport and Churchville. Spencerport, tough loss last week, Steve. Coming in on this one, probably pretty hungry, and they're hosting a Churchville Chi-Lite team. And again, the Spencerport team took all the way to the final last year, Steve. A lot of those guys are hungry to keep making their mark, the Rangers.
Yeah, and they had some injuries to Cam Mash earlier in the season. If he's back and healthy, he's a difference maker for sure. We've had him on the program. We know what kind of player and leader he is for that club.
Brighton, the 3 seed, is going to host Webster Thomas, the 6 seed. The Bruins 6-2, the Titans 3-5. Potential for a good game. I would favor the home team here, Steve. They got a little championship playoff pedigree, and I like that this time of year.
I do. Brighton is really, Coach Leanne has done a great job of putting that program on the map. Their quarterback, Mikevich, is fun to watch. He had like 5 touchdowns last week. And, I think that, Webster Thomas, we know the story there. They play with a lot of heart, a lot of determination. But I think Brighton has a tough draw. Brighton actually won the regular season matchup 24-0.
Nice. Good stat there. Stat of the day. And then the final one is Hilton, the 2 seed, coming off 7 straight wins after losing a season opener to Webster Schrader, the number 1 seed. They're going to host Gates Chi-Lite. The Spartans 1-7. Boy, Steve, remember when this used to be like the marquee matchup and Gates was the big dog and Lapani's little guys are trying to hang with them. I think this whole thing comes down to Schrader and Hilton. I could be wrong. Hilton's got some big boys up front. I think they're gonna roll in this game here. They got Jeffrey Broadnax running the ball, Robert Lowry, Colton Thorpe, a QB, and then Carl Coons, one of the best linemen in Section 5. 2-way lineman is terrific. And they got a guy behind on the sideline there that knows a few things too. Coach Rich Lapani stands on the brink, Steve. A win on Friday will put him as tied with Don Santini, the longtime coach at Fairport and Avon, with 206 career wins. If they can win on Friday night.
Santini's Leroy, buddy. Don't get that.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Come after me, won't they?
Oh, well, it's not me. It's all the Awaken Knights. And Coach Santini, Fairport grad, still revered in Leroy 50 years after he left.
So it would be tied at fourth at 206 would be Lapani and Santini. Then you jump up to Gene Maston, the former Hornell boss, 227. We're trying. Well, actually, I beg your pardon. He's still the leader.
In between. Yeah,
He's
Dave
still the
Whitcomb's
leader.
somewhere in between. He's around the 222, 223 mark, right?
We're doing some due diligence here to trying to find out where Dave Wickham is. He's in Mid Lakes now. He's been about 18 different schools in Section 5. We think he's somewhere around 222, 223. So I think Mr. Maston's record is safe for this year, but who knows the next couple of years if he'll get knocked off the top. But Steve, I want to go back to Hilton and Schrader. We can talk about this in the next couple of weeks too.
Well, I want to go, but before you get to Hilton and Schrader, let's look at Hilton and Brighton as a potential semifinal. That game was 35-20 Hilton on October 13th. I don't count the Bruins out. I think that would be a great game, a competitive game. The slight lean toward Hilton there, but you go back, this was a season opener. If we get to this in the final, Schrader 21, Hilton 14 it's actually week 2, September 9th. This would really be a game that I think you would see how much teams have grown throughout the season, where they've improved, maybe some injuries take place. But I think if we get to that, it'd be a heck of a game.
This was a game that where Schrader rallied in the fourth quarter. They were down in this game, and Drew Pagano, what a season he's had at senior quarterback. He had 2 touchdown passes in that ball game. In the fourth quarter, a couple of really bombs, right? To Tyler Washington and Torrance Washington, the older guys. The senior is Torrance. He caught a 56-yarder, and Tyler caught a 58-yarder. Drew Pagano's had a terrific season for Schrader. I think the Warriors, this could be really a great talk about team that can put it in the air and a team that's going to hit you in the mouth. Hilton, a great matchup if that gets to be our final, Steve.
Contrast in styles. It's early November. You don't know what the weather will be like. And we all know with Rich Lapani, if he's got a hot running back, he doesn't care. He'll feed him 35, 40 times if he moves the chains.
It's funny you say that because Pagano hooked up in one game. It was against Brighton, 27-7. Schrader won it in week 3. Those 2 guys hooked up for 5 consecutive passes in a row. 5 plays, quarterback to the same receiver. I don't think I've ever seen that. We've seen a guy carry the ball 5 times in a row, but never passed it 5 times in a row.
And your father, Tony DiVeronica, would love it, right? If they don't stop it, keep doing it.
Why change it? Exactly. All right, moving on to Class A2. And again, I think this is Chalk City, baby. I think it's Chalk City. I think this is East Championship to lose. They're the top seed at 8-0. They have rolled over. I did their research. I got to use it. They've outscored teams 333 points to 90. Zymir Jackson is fantastic. Their closest game was against the 2 seed, Canandaigua.
Again, and that's where I go Lee Corso, right? Not so fast, my friend. Yep, it was East World of Inquiry 26-21 on September 23rd. So that's like a week 4 game. Canandaigua fell behind earlier in that game, came back and made it a game. But Canandaigua also has played more close games this year, Jeff, than we remember. They're a little bit of a young team. Drew Willamy, the quarterback. The Canandaigua Athena game
coming off a loss to Hilton too. That doesn't hurt a team going into the sectionals.
That was a great matchup for Canandaigua, just because you see the power of Hilton, a little bit bigger school. But Canandaigua Athena, if that's the semifinal, that was a great game, 28-21
week 3.
September 16th. So I think there's competition in this bracket. And I think if we're circling one game in the quarterfinals, game you and I called the regular season game on Varsity Media, it's and we predicted it as a potential sectional matchup. 4-4 Irondequoit home against number 5 Brockport. Game we saw, Irondequoit used that running game. Mikkel Christensen, great game. They won 33-8 that night. But the key to that game was, I don't know if it was the key to the game, but it changed the tone of that game. Landon Scott on like the 3rd or 4th play from scrimmage, the fine Brockport quarterback and defensive end, he came out of the game then. Last week, you mentioned the Spencerport loss last week. That loss was 43-42 game to Brockport, game they call the War for the Oar, and Landon Scott threw 5 touchdowns. So I think that game, the presence of Landon Scott tightens that game and makes it much more competitive. And we thought going into the regular season game, it could go either way. It didn't. So that's a game to take a look at.
And Irondequoit's coming off 2 straight losses. So that, they haven't won since that game. So we'll see how that all shakes out in that matchup. And Greece Athena can make some noise here, Steve. I think they got some playmakers. I like what they can do.
I
So
agree.
they're going to
And
play Eastridge. They'll play Eastridge, or the 3 seed. They'll probably win. And Canada gets Arcadia in their first round matchup, the 2-7 game. These are all Friday night games, folks. But I think I think East is a cut above. I've heard that from some coaches that I know and trust, and I think it's the Eagles or bust. Let's take a quick break, Steve Bradley, and come back with the rest of the classes here on our special edition of the Connors and Ferris High School Sports Show, Section 5 Football Playoff Style on Rock Sports Now.
Looking for a used truck? Can you find one out of 350? At BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com, you'll find one. Love SUVs? 800 are waiting for you to take one home at BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com. Add 350 pre-owned sedans, and you've got a total of 1,500 used vehicles only at BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
Bob Johnson's got you right. Bob Johnson.
While we celebrate 140 years of serving our community, the kind of delicious joy that lasts a lifetime, we look forward to serving you for 140 more. With hardworking, wholehearted, passionate people who will help shape new memories for generations to come.
You don't choose to get hurt at work, but you can choose the workers' comp attorneys at Connors and Ferris to fight for your money and medical benefits you deserve.
With over 20 years of industry experience, we will give your case our undivided attention so that you and your family can focus on your recovery.
So call Connors and Ferris, the workers' comp attorneys dedicated to fighting for injured workers' rights.
Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys.
The best 3 things here at McQuaid are definitely the sports, the brotherhood, and the service to community. I think that's a really big, important thing that McQuaid stresses, which is part of creating a better and great man. You definitely feel a connection with your fellow students here. It's being all guys school. You're able to relate to each other on a personal level, and everyone's very welcoming here with open arms and willing to be your friend.
Local McDonald's operators care about our local schools, teams, and student athletes. That's why they support the return of high school athletics in the Rochester area and around the state. See you before or after the big game at McDonald's. Welcome back, Section 5. Game on!
Protecting your home's worth pays off when you trust the experienced team at American Custom. We've all seen our homes go up in value, making home improvements a wise choice. If you think your home is worth a lot now, just wait until our team is done with it. Call American today.
Welcome back to the Connors and Ferris High School Sports Show. Jeff DiVeronica and Steve Bradley with our Section 5 football forecast. We are down on Class B. We're not down. It's going to be a great competition. The defending champion, also the top seed, Steve, Batavia, 8-0. They're going to play Dansville, Wayland, Cohocton. The 2 seed is Monroe, which has had some big wins, including against your HFL Cougars. They're 6-2. They're going to host Geneva. The 3 seed HFL 6-2 going to host Palmac, the 6 seed, and then 4-5. It's Livonia against Wayne. A couple of 4-4 squads. Steve, what do you think of this bracket, Mr. Bradley?
I think you obviously need to start with Batavia. They're the defending champ. They went 8-0 this season, 8th in the New York State Sports Writers Association poll. Have not had a misstep all year, and actually beat both Monroe and HFL Monroe 28-7 early in the year, and HFL 35-20 on October 14th. Aiden Anderson is just a running back that has speed that others don't have in this class. Javen McFarland's a quarterback, very solid. His brother Carter McFarland's is a receiver, and then they've got a couple of linemen, Matthew McQuethy being one that just make the Blue Devils primed and ready. Coach Brendan Briggs, they've won 5 out of 8 titles. So I think it starts with Batavia. Then you take a good look
That's
at Monroe.
one of those
Monroe's,
names, by the way, McFarland's and Batavia. Take it to the bank. If you come out of the womb and your last name is McFarland's, you're going to be a good athlete.
and it's a few generations of that too.
Sure.
So Monroe Jeff is really the team to look at because the record is 6-2, could be 7-1. They won big in week 1, but had forfeit for an ineligible player. They've been putting up some big numbers. They have Geneva team that's 4-4, and if I'm giving the Coach of the Year award in this division, it's Larry Guerreri at Geneva. They were 0-7 last year, and now he's got this team 4-4 in the sectionals. So
tough draw.
Great job by Larry Guerreri out in Geneva. But Monroe coming down from Class A really turned heads with that 26-7 win over HFL on October 8th. From the HFL point of view, they've got to take care of business against Pell Mac this week. But an HFL Monroe semifinal, I think, would be interesting. Cougars were really done in by turnovers that day, and Coach John Russ said on the record that Monroe's speed caught them by surprise. So I think you would see a better prepared Cougars team if they meet up with Monroe. I think that would be an interesting matchup. And then the Wayne Livonia is interesting because Livonia just beat Wayne 44-3 last week. And Livonia started
call it interesting. I wouldn't call it interesting.
Well, Livonia has
why.
come on so strong. That's almost like what happened. I mean, was that just a game where everything went wrong and the Eagles can respond? But hats off to Livonia. They started the season, Jeff, 0-3, coming up from Class C, and are 4-4. So, I mean, to me, that's the game that with probably the most intrigue in the first round. And but then, like you said, I mean, Batavia, you have to start with Batavia, give them their due respect, and then knowing that both HFL and Monroe would have to play 2 really tough games just to get to the finals and win.
Moving on to the Class C, defending champion East Rochester Gananda Dramatic championship last year for the Bombers. They come in this year as the 4th seed with a 7-1 record. Some of the records are skewed in this division, but how about the number 1 seed, a familiar name? It's fairly quiet, Steve. The Leroy Owatkin Knights at 6-1, Steve. The number 1 seed. They're going to host Haverling. 4-4. The Rams are the 8th seed.
And Jeff, there's 12 teams in Class C, so not everybody plays each other. To me, this is the most wide open bracket in sectionals. You look at the number 8 seed. First of all, every team that made sectionals is 500 or better. You can't say that in other brackets.
Right.
And then you look at the state rankings. Attica, which is actually the number 3 seed in this bracket, is the highest seed in the state rankings. They're 9th. Leroy is 11th. You go back to week 1, score Leroy 35, Haverling 32. Tight game right out of the chute.
Wow.
So teams in this bracket are going to need to come to play, or they're going to be putting the pads and helmets away. There's no cakewalks across the board here.
Let me go through the other matchups real quick. 4-5 games, ER Gananda against Lions Sodas. That's 7-1 Bombers against Lions Sodas 5-2. Then you got Attica, you mentioned 6-2 against the 6th seed Letchworth Warsaw Perry 4-3. And finally at the bottom of the bracket, number 2 seed Penyan Dundee at 6-1 against the 7th seeded Midlakes Wickham's. Screaming Eagles at 4-4. So everyone's on notice here, Steve.
It is, and the Penyan Dundee, if you look at the what happened this season, they did beat Midlakes 48-7 in their matchup. So that's the one with the widest margin. You go back to Attica, Letchworth, Perry, Warsaw, just 2 weeks ago, 20-17, tight game. So that and Letchworth, Perry, and Warsaw, combining those 3 communities into one team. Livingston County football, that don't sleep on the 6th seed here as much as I like Attica. And then East Rochester Gananda, you mentioned defending champs. Don't know much about Lions Sodas. They're 5-2. ER did win 24-0 earlier in the season. So, like I said, in my opinion, this is the tightest bracket of them all. And I would not be surprised if this is where you see a couple of the lower seeds come out with victories.
The guru. You're guruing like a champ right now, Steve. All right, let's go down to Let's go to Class D, the top seed. Oakfield, Alabama, Elba, the defending champion. They had the 26-21 win over Avon last year. They're 8-0. They're going to host Geneseo. And good to see Geneseo in the playoffs. Remember a few years back, they didn't even play because they were worried about injuries and didn't have a team that was healthy to get into the position.
Right. The Aggies, we had Coach Winters on the show. Number 2 in the state. They lost to the state's top-ranked team, Tioga, in the state semifinals last year. But before we move them all the way forward,
here we go.
Let's take a look at the Alexander Trojans, who are the number 2 seed, Jeff, with a 7-0 record. Oakfield, Alabama, 8-0, number 2 in the state. Alexander, 7-0, number 7 in the state. These schools they're about 15 miles apart. Genesee region rivals. Oakfield, Alabama's signature win this year is 38-6 win over Leroy. The number 1 team in D beat the number 1 team in C. Hats off there. Really, the point of comparison, you mentioned the Avon Braves. Oakfield, Alabama defeated Avon 42-14.
Okay.
Alexander defeated Avon 33-15. So really, if you're comparing, and that's the best we can do because these teams haven't been on the field, the Trojans could give the Aggies a game. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, we'll see. I know that the Aggies probably are going to watch this and put this on the bulletin board if they can figure out how to do that.
The way they prepare themselves for every game, they would expect to be pushed as well. I don't think I'm saying anything that's going to
after talking to those guys, they're running through walls no matter what, whether they hear our program or not.
If they're looking for us the motivation, they're probably looking in the wrong place.
The 4-5 game, it's York Pavilion at 5-2 against Notre Dame of Batavia, 4-3. Avon Braves, never count them out either. 5-3. They're going to host Calmum, Byron Burgeon at 3-5. Should be a good matchup, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about border games, right? Those communities right next to each other. If you're looking at the game of the week in this bracket, that's probably it. They'll slug it out and they'll have a lot of fun, and there'll be some bumps and bruises on Sunday night and Monday morning for sure.
Interesting. Most of these games are all Friday night. OAE against Geneseo was a Saturday kickoff, 1:00. So interesting there, Steve. Shall we move on to 8-man?
8-man. We can do a quick touch there. Canisteo Greenwood, Jeff, number 1 team in New York State, 8-0. And Pembroke, the number 2 seed, 7-1. I think that's where the bread's going to be buttered in 8-man. And they played a good game early in the season. Canisteo Greenwood with a 28-14 win over Pembroke back on September 9th.
Well, a lot of fun, a lot of numbers, a lot of names, and a lot of intelligence from Steve Bradley. Well done, my man. That's why you're the guru.
It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did this. Do it again next week?
Yeah, let's do it again next week. No guests, just me and you, breaking it down like we used to do with the Democrat and Chronicle. For Steve Bradley and our producer, Joe Brott, thanks for watching us right here on the Connors and Ferris High School Sports Show Special Football Forecast Edition right here on YouTube, Rock Sports Now.